Hello students. In this video, I am going to explain chapter 7 from your supplementary reader in English, class 12th Vistas. The name of the chapter is Evans Tries an O Level by Colin, Dexter. This is a very interesting story about a prisoner, James Roderick Evans. He was famous by the name of Evans the Break. In the story Evans Tries an O Level, Evans is a prisoner who made a plan to fool all the officers of the prison and to escape the prison. And in the end of the story, we see him getting successful in his plan. In the beginning of the story, he showed a desire to have some sort of academic qualification while he was in his imprisonment. He wanted to have the O-level examination in German. For a few months, he had night classes in O-level German. A German teacher was appointed to teach him. The examination was arranged in the prison cell only because the jail administration was not in position to take any risk in regard of Evans. Since he had already escaped the jail thrice earlier, and this is the reason that he was given the title Evans the Break. The governor of Oxford prison made all the security arrangements himself so that the prisoner should not be able to run out of the exam. And a very trustworthy invigilator was arranged to invigilate Evans, the prisoner. And the name of the invigilator was McLeary. Remember this name? McLeary. McLeary was a parson. Two prison officers were also arranged to keep an eye on Evans. The name of these two prison officers were number one, Jackson, and number two is Stephens. Jackson and Stephens. When the examination was over, the invigilator left with all the exam papers. But when he left, it was found that Evans had escaped in the appearance of a parson and had left the badly wounded parson whose head was severely bleeding behind the cell. But later it was found that the wounded person which was left in the prison cell was not any real person but a companion or a friend of Evans who entered into the cell of Evans in the guise of McLeary, and the real McLeary was locked and tied in his own house or in his own flat since morning. And eventually, in the end of the story, we see that the governor was able to catch Evans where? In a hotel room. And then Evans was handcuffed and sent away with a prison officer in a van. But the governor did not realize that the man who handcuffed Evans was none other than his friend. And we see that once again, Evans, with the help of his friends, was able to successfully escape the prison for the fourth time. And now let's get into the detailed explanation of the story. Kindly get ready and watch the video till the end. And I request all of you to please be very attentive and also keep making notes while watching this video. The story starts with the question, should criminals in the prison be given the opportunity of learning and education? So this is the question that is given at the beginning of the story. And then comes the list of the dramatis personae, meaning the characters of a play, novel, or narrative. So, number one in the list is the secretary of the examination board. And number two is the governor of HM Prison, Oxford. Number three, James Evans. Number four, Mr. Jackson, the prison officer. Number five, Mr. Stephens, a prison officer. And number six, the Reverend S. McLeary, the invigilator. And then number seven, Detective Superintendent Mr. Carter. And the last on the list is Mr. Bell, Detective Chief Inspector. And then the book says that all precautions have been taken to see to it that the O-level German examination arranged in the prison for Evans does not provide Evans with any means of escape. And then the story starts with the conversation between the secretary of the examinations board and the governor of Oxford prison. This is a telephonic conversation in which the governor informs the secretary of the examination board in the month of March regarding the request that Evans made to get some sort of academic qualification in German in the form of a O-level exam. While conveying the message of Evans to the secretary, the governor seems to be confident and sure that they should give Evans a chance to appear in the exam. The governor of Oxford prison also informed the secretary that Evans started night classes in O-level German last September. And also, he said that Evans was dead keen to get some sort of academic qualification. And after having a friendly conversation, the secretary and the governor of Oxford prison, they were in agreement that an examination should be arranged for Evans. But since he was a prisoner and had already escaped the prison thrice earlier, and therefore they were not in the position to take any risk, and they decided to arrange the examination in his cell only, in the cell of Evans. But all the arrangements were made so that Evans should not create any opportunity to run away from the prison. Evans's cell was in the heavily guarded recreational block just across from the D wing. And since the portion where Evans was living was heavily guarded, it was impossible for Evans to escape the prison, breaking the prison gates. It was impossible for Evans. Then we see that Evans's German teacher came to wish him best of luck. He came to his cell at 8:30 p.m. on Monday, 7 June. The teacher said, "Good luck for tomorrow," and Evans thanked his teacher. His teacher also told him that it was impossible for Evans to escape. But on hearing the words of his teacher, Evans said, "I may surprise everybody. I may surprise everybody." And then the next morning we saw the arrival of Jackson at 8:30 a.m. 8:30 in the morning the next day. Mr. Jackson is a prison officer, and it was his duty to make all the security arrangements for Evans. With Jackson stood one more prison officer, and his name is what? Stephens. And Stephens was a big, strong, and heavy-looking man, only recently recruited to this profession. This means that he was recently appointed in that prison. And the reason of Mr. Jackson's meeting Evans this morning was to see whether all these security arrangements were perfect. Whether Evans was prepared for his exam, and also to see that Evans should not have anything dangerous with him to be used to escape the prison. It was whose duty? Duty of Jackson. And when Jackson came to Evans, Evans was wearing a filthy looking red and white bobble hat upon his head. He said, I was going to shave when you came in. Please give me some time for what? To complete his shaving. When Evans said this, Jackson all of a sudden thought of the razor that Evans was going to use. And he instructed Stephens to take away the razor from Evans when he completes shaving, because that razor could be used by Evans in his escape plan. And not only that, but also Jackson had already taken away the nail scissors and the nail file of Evans, because those things could also be used in his escape plan. After this conversation, Jackson said one more very important thing to Evans, that Evans had half an hour to get ready for his exam, and also he told him to remove the hat that he was wearing. Dear students, please listen to this point very carefully. This part of the story is very important because it talks about the role of his hat in this story. Evans requested Mr. Jackson to allow to wear his hat while giving his exam, because his hat was lucky for him and it could bring him success in his exam. Evans was aware that buried somewhere in Jackson was a tiny core of compassion. And Jackson allowed Evans to wear his hat. He was successful in that to convince Jackson. And now the secret of hat. Why Evans wanted to wear his hat while giving his exam? Please listen to this very carefully, students. Evans had long and wavy hair, but he had already cut his hair using the razor. He had to use a razor to cut his hair because his scissors were taken away already by Jackson. He had to cut his hair hiding from Jackson and Stephens. Also, he had to hide his new haircut from Jackson and Stephens. Why he had to do this? Why he had to hide this new haircut from Jackson and Stephens? He had to cut his hair like this because he had to come in the guise of Mac Leary. He had to look like Mac Leary. In the beginning of the story, or in the beginning of this video, you were told that Reverend McLeary was the invigilator of Evans, and the real McLeary was kept tied in his own house since morning. And the person who comes to invigilate in the cell of Evans was not the real McLeary, but a friend of Evans. Not the real McLeary, but a friend of Evans. And as per the plan of Evans, there had to be two McLearys or two invigilators. Fake McLeary was to be Evans's friend, and the second McLeary was to be Evans himself. The falsely wounded fake McLeary, the friend of Evans, will be able to leave the prison, fooling the jail administration and providing all the necessary things to Evans so that he also could escape from the prison impersonating McLeary. And now the exam time comes. and McLeary comes to the prison. Remember this? This McLeary is not the real McLeary, but the friend of Evans, because the original one is kept tied in his own flat. He was carrying a small brown suitcase which contained all that he would need for his morning duties, including a sealed question paper envelope, yellow invigilation form, a special authentication card from the examination board, a paper knife, a Bible, and a current copy of the Church Times. So these were the things that he was carrying. The 2-hour examination was scheduled to start at 9:15 a.m. in the morning. 2 hard chairs were brought into the cell of Evans. The slightly less battered chair was placed in front of the table which stood near the cell door. Just before the exam, Jackson warned Evans. Also, it was informed to Evans that the governor himself will be continually keep an eye on the activities inside the cell of Evans. All the conversation will be audible to the governor. How? Through phone. In the little lodge just inside the prison's main gate, the Reverend S. McLeary signed his name neatly in the visitor's book, and from that place he walked side by side with the silent prison officer across the exercise yard to the D wing, where he was greeted by Jackson. The wing's heavy outer door was unlocked and locked behind them. The heavy inner door, the same. And McLeary was handed into Stephen's keeping. And now it was all the time the duty of Stephens to keep an eye on the activities going on inside the cell through a peephole. It was 9 a.m. when the governor switched on the receiver. And I have told you that the governor himself had to keep an eye, had to listen to all the conversation inside the cell of Evans. How? Through phone. Jackson was instructed to tell Evans of the temporary little precaution. Among other things, it was the duty of the invigilator to ensure that the strictest silence was observed. The governor was very alert all the time. He thought that it was all very well getting rid of any potential weapon that Evans could have used, but he was worried about something. But what about McLeary? What if quite unwittingly innocent McLeary had brought in something, a jackknife perhaps? And what if Evans held him hostage with such a weapon? So that was the fear of the governor. The governor reached for the phone. It was 9:12 a.m. The examinee and the invigilator had already been introduced by Stephens. And then Jackson came back and shouted to McLeary through the cell door, "Can you come out? Can you come outside for a minute, sir?" And he shared the worries of the governor to McLeary. Jackson and Stephens checked McLeary thoroughly. While they were checking him, they found a semi-inflated rubber ring. On asking about this semi-inflated rubber ring, McLeary informed them that because he was suffering from hemorrhoids and while sitting for a long time, that rubber ring was desperately, badly needed. Without that, it was not possible for him to sit for a long time. Actually, in this semi-inflated rubber ring, the false McLeary brought in was the clotted blood of pig to be used to make the prison authorities fool that McLeary was hit on his head and he was bleeding badly as per the plan of Evans. After all this, the examination started and there was a normal conversation between McLeary and Evans. Please keep in mind that this McLeary was not the real McLeary. We see while the examination was in progress, a call comes from the assistant secretary from the examination board. Please remember that this was the first fake call from the friends of Evans. This call was regarding a correction slip in the question paper. A correction slip in where? In the question paper. Actually, that information was nothing but just a message to be delivered to Evans. That correction slip read like this. On page 3, line 15, fourth word should read goldenen, not goldene. And the whole phrase will therefore read zum goldenen loven, not zum goldene loven. And the same thing was repeated as per that correction slip. Actually, this correction slip was a message for Evans regarding a hotel where they planned to go. And this was from his friend of Evans. And now there was a second fake call, and this time this call was from the magistrate's court. And what did they need? They needed a prison van and a couple of prison officers for a remand case. Remember this prison van. This van is going to be used in the end of the story by a friend of Evans. While the examination was going on, it was the duty of Stephens to peer through the peephole at intervals of 1 minute or so, and after that every 2 minutes. Each time he saw him, he found him sitting with his pen between his lips and staring straight in front of him towards the door, seeking, it seemed, some badly needed inspiration from somewhere, and McLeary was sitting in front of Evans. At 10:50 a.m., Evans demanded for a blanket, and his demand was provided. His demand was granted. Why he needed this blanket? A very important part of the story. Hiding himself in the blanket, he changed his appearance. Hiding himself from Stephens inside the blanket, Evans came in the appearance of McLeary. And now, at this point, there are two fake McLearys in the cell of Evans. But Stephens was unaware about this change, about this action that took place inside the cell of Evans. 11:22 a.m. Jackson shouted along the corridor to Stephens. He said that the governor wanted to speak to him. Actually, this was also a fake call from one of Evans's friends. And these words were very clear orders from the governor, who was actually not the real governor, but the friend of Evans. That Stephens himself was to accompany McLeary where? To the main prison gates. When Stephens heard these orders, he was so happy because this very big responsibility was not given to Jackson but to Stephens. And after when the exam was over, as per the orders given by the governor, Stephens took McLeary, the invigilator, to the prison gate, and when he came back to the cell of Evans, he saw that McLeary was inside the cell and he was bleeding too badly. In panic, Stephens shouted for Jackson. Mr. McLeary slowly raised himself. His face twisted tightly with pain, and he came to his senses. And actually, he was doing a drama only. He came to his senses and said that don't call the ambulance, just get the police. I know where Evans has gone. And all of a sudden, sirens were sounding. Prison officers barked orders. Puzzled prisoners pushed their way along the corridor. Doors were banged and bolted. The phones were ringing everywhere. And there was the atmosphere of panic everywhere. Jackson and Stephens took McLeary from either side to the prison yard, and there the governor also came. He was confused and anxious, and he was looking very serious also. This man, McLeary, was not actually hurt. He was just making a drama to make these prison people fool, so that Evans should have more time to execute his plan successfully. And at this time, Detective Superintendent Carter also came and asked the governor. What did he ask? What the hell is happening, sir? And turning to McLeary, he said, who has hit him? He was also shocked, Carter. And the hurt McLeary instructed them to move to Elsfield Way because he wanted to say that Evans had gone there only, Elsfield Way. Actually, he was making them fool. This hurt McLeary was making these prison people fool. And they got this conclusion that because the examinations board was in Elsfield Way, it was the possibility that someone from the examination board must have been involved in the escape plan of Evans. And after this, the governor turned to Jackson and Stephens and got very angry on them. And in extreme anger, the governor asked Stephens why he took McLeary to the prison gate. Stephens said, he said that, sir, it was your orders only. Therefore, he had to do that. He just had to follow the orders of the governor. On this, the governor realized that it was the call from a friend of Evans. At this time, the governor got very angry on Jackson because it was his duty, his responsibility to make sure that Evans should not have any dangerous thing with him. And how he was able to arrange all the things required in his escape plan. So therefore, governor was extremely angry on Jackson. They made all their calculations, and then finally they got this idea that Evans must have gone to Newbury. After some time, the governor asked Carter whether he managed to get McLeary to the hospital all right. That was a question made to Carter by the governor. He informed him that yes, he was in the hospital. He informed that McLeary was dropped at the examination office. Then from there, they rang for the ambulance. This information was given to the governor. To confirm this, the governor called the Redcliffe Hospital, that was the hospital, Redcliffe Hospital, regarding McLeary. But he was informed that there was no McLeary there in that hospital. At this point, the governor was in panic and he realized that the person who was hurt was also not the real McLeary, but he was just doing the drama to make the prison people fool. And by the tea time, everyone in the prison knew what had happened. It had not been Evans impersonating McLeary who walked out. It had been Evans impersonating McLeary who had stayed in. And now Evans is out of the prison, and after enjoying fish and chips, he was ready to go to the hotel and have an early night. He walked up to the reception desk of the Golden Lion Hotel. The receptionist was not the same girl who booked Evans in, who booked him in. He told the receptionist to give him an early morning call at 6:45 a.m. as the next day was going to be another busy day. After talking to the receptionist, he walked up to the broad stairs. How? Whistling. This means that he was in relaxed mood. He was happy. He was happy to think how smartly they were able to make the jail administration fool. Also, he thought how smartly McLeary brought everything in double. Two black fronts, two collars, and etc. He thought how difficult it was to change the appearance inside that cell of the prison, inside the blanket, hiding everything from Stephens. It was really a challenging task. But everything else had gone so well. And in the car, he found everything they promised him: soap and water, clothes, the Ordnance Survey map of Oxfordshire. He got all these things with the help of his friends, as he had got some good friends, some very good and clever friends. He unlocked his bedroom door and closed it behind him. When he entered into his room, he saw the governor sitting on the narrow bed. Evans was shocked to see him. When the governor saw Evans, he said it was useless to try to run, as he had got his men all around the hotel. This statement of the governor was actually not true, since he had only two people with him, including the receptionist girl. For some time, Evans sat silently. He could not utter a word for some time. And finally, he opened his mouth and started speaking about all his plans, about the correction slip, the fake phone calls, about the hotel, about his friends. Then he spoke about the semi-inflated rubber ring that McLeary brought in the cell and how they made use of that clotted blood. After listening to all these things from Evans, the governor shook his head in a token of reluctant admiration. Evans made no show of resistance, and side by side, two men walked slowly down the stairs. The silent prison officer handcuffed the recaptured Evans, and together the two men clambered awkwardly into the back seat of the prison van. You remember this van? Actually, this prison officer who handcuffed Evans was not a real officer but a friend of Evans. The governor said to Evans, "See you soon, Evans." As the prison van turned right from Chipping Norton onto the Oxford Road, the silent prison officer unlocked the handcuffs and leaned forward towards the driver. He said to the driver, "For Christ's sake, get a move on. it won't take them long to find out. Find out what? To find out where they were, Evans and his friends. And the driver asked, where do you suggest to go then? And Evans suggested to go to where? Evans suggested to go to Newbury. And do you know why Evans took the name of Newbury? Because Evans had already made fool of all the prison officers by misguiding them to search for Evans in Newbury. So already the prison people had wasted their time finding for Evans there at Newbury. So to find Evans, they will go everywhere except for Newbury. So in this way, Evans was able to escape the prison for the fourth time successfully. And this is the end of the story. Though this story is quite complicated, but it's really a very interesting story. So to have a clear understanding of the story, kindly watch this video at least twice. Please like, subscribe and share. Thank you for watching.